Nice to see you, Tom. My old friend. You know, when I was staying in your room at Harvard after I ran away from prep school, I was staying, you and Ted had a room there, right, in one of those dorms. And I was watching the David Susskind show on television. And they were having a big discussion of something, and I was really excited about it, and I wanted to engage in the discussion. And I was shouting at the different people, and they were arguing, and I was like, and then I suddenly stopped and I said, I don't think you were there. I think you might have been. That's what it must be like when you're dead and you can't reach people and talk to them. And you want to say something to them and they can't hear you no matter what you do. And I had not studied Tibetan Buddhism yet. I didn't know about Book of the Dead. But that's exactly, of course, what they describe in the Book of the Dead. Where it's in the movie also Ghost, which I also hadn't seen at that time. So it was like a momentary, little thing about former life, actually, in your room. In 1958, or 59, like that, 58. Isn't that unbelievable? Thomas Griffin, a great friend of mine. In the Vimalakirti Sutra, I didn't introduce, when we did last week on the Prajnaparamita Sutras, in the Tibetan tradition there are these what they call two lineages, or two processes. One of them is the Samutawi Gyuba, the lineage of the profound view, and the other one is the Jachen Jupe Gyuba, the lineage of the vast deeds, or I like to say the magnificent deeds, rather than just vast. And one of them is associated in any Tibetan chapel, like in the chapel over there, you have a Sangha on one side, on the right hand of Shakyamuni, on the left as you look at the temple, and then you have Nagarjuna on the left side. So always when you see the Buddha like that, you have a Sangha and Nagarjuna on the two sides of the Buddha, and then above them you have Maitreya and Manjushri, the Bodhisattvas. And those are the profound lineage and the profound vision or view or worldview lineage and the magnificent actions of compassion and the Bodhisattva lineage. Those are the two lineages. And in a way, the epitome sutra of the profound view, the discourses of the profound view, were the Shakyamuni Buddha's Prajnaparamita discourses. And in the Vimalakirti, which is like a kind of doorway to all the Mahayana sutras, the fifth chapter called The Consolation of the Invalid, which we read 2 weeks ago, I guess, the whole thing about personal selflessness and objective selflessness, subjective selflessness and objective selflessness, where he talks about there's no I that owns the sickness, no I that owns the body, and also the body isn't there because it's just a collection of aggregates, which is the objective selflessness, on page 45. That sort of introduces the Prajnaparamita. And then the ninth chapter of Vimalakirti, the non-duality chapter, where everybody gives us some sort of 32 bodhisattvas give their expressions on non-duality. And then Vimalakirti gives his, which is to say nothing, to be silent. So the lion's roar of the silence of Vimalakirti. But it's because it's a silence in a particular context, where he's expected to say something authoritative. That'll be like the answer. And then he doesn't say anything because there is no formulaic answer about the nature of the inconceivable non-duality, That like this is nirvana, right now we're all in nirvana. This whole samsara that we're in is in nirvana or something, or it is nirvana. If we understood it, it's samsara because we don't understand it, in other words. And that's a marvelous, so those two are like Prajnaparamita. And then chapter 6, to come to the topic today, which is called The Inconceivable Liberation. And this chapter 6 is the one that's said to be the kind of doorway or key, a drop from the ocean of the Flower Ornament Sutra, of the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Huayan Jing in Chinese. This one, translated from Chinese by my old friend Thomas Cleary years ago. few years ago. And the way that it begins in the Vimalakirti, before we turn to the Avatamsaka itself, this is the magnificent deeds. It also, of course, both have the other side. Both have the profound and the, wisdom and compassion. Is almost both. But the emphasis here in the Inconceivable Liberation is on the magnificent universe of enlightenment, how the universe itself, the relative universe, is magnificent when you understand it. It's magical, it's incredible, it's amazing. And the way he says it now, the chapter begins where Shariputra is wondering. He's feeling tired of standing up, and he wants to sit down. And there's thousands of people in Vimalakirti's house, but none of them can sit down. So he's thinking, there's not even a single chair in this house. Where are these disciples and bodhisattvas going to sit? The disciples means the Theravada people, the individual vehicle people and bodhisattvas. So Vimalakirti read the thought of the Venerable Shariputra and said, Reverend Shariputra, did you come here for the sake of the Dharma, or did you come here for the sake of a chair? Typical poor Shariputra. So then, I came for the Dharma, not the chair, says Shariputra. So then, Vimalakirti starts in on this long thing where he says, Reverend Shariputra, he who is interested in the Dharma is not interested even in his own body, much less in a chair. Reverend Shariputra, he who is interested in the Dharma has no interest in matter, sensation, intellect, motivation, or consciousness, the five aggregates. Interested in the Dharma, he has no interest in the realm of desire, realm of matter, or immaterial realm. It goes on and on like that. And ends up that if you want to be interested in Dharma, you should take no interest in anything. He says, just open your mind and take no interest in anything, he says. So then when Vimalakirti spoke that, it's a long thing, I'm not going to read it. You already read it, actually, a lot of you. He says, 500 gods who were attending obtained the purity of the Dharma eye in viewing all things. So that's the first thing, is he creates a foundation for the inconceivable liberation, for this magnificent deeds universe in total, the illusoriness of the world. So you're not interested in any, because it's all illusory. So that opens it through its emptiness, ultimate state. It opens it to being transmutable, transformable in all different kinds of ways. It means that the way that you do see it is your own artwork. You are the artist of your world. Your imagination creates your world in a certain way, and our collective imagination of a society, of a planet full of beings, it creates our planet. And not just the humans, the animals, the insects, the gods, the demons, all together, the mutual intersection of the minds of all the beings creates the world. It's a Buddhist view. The relative world shapes it. And therefore, a Buddha world is shaped by Buddhas into this magical way, he's going to say. So then the next thing he does, but to get the inconceivable liberation teaching, people have to be in a different mood for the Hawaiian Jing, the Avatamsaka Sutra. And so to put them in a different mood, he finds them some chairs. So then he tells Manjushri to bring some chairs. He says, where have you seen the best chairs? In the universe. Because Manjushri has been everywhere in the universe. He says, where are the best chairs? And Manjushri says, he says, if one crosses the Buddha fields to the east, which are more numerous than all the grains of sand of 32 Ganges riverbeds. That's a big number. One will discover a universe called Merudwaja. And Merudwaja means the axial mountain banner. So it's a tall universe. Like that Tom Hanks movie, the tall or big movie, whatever it's called. There dwells a Tathagata, a Buddha, called Meru Pradiparaja, the king who is the lamp of the axial mountain. His body measures 8,400,000 leagues in height. 8,400,000, oh, look at Christy, look at that. 8,400,000 leagues in height. And the height of his throne is 6,800,000 leagues in height. And the bodhisattvas there are 4,200,000 leagues tall, and their own thrones are 3,400,000 leagues high. Just the number is bigger than the axis, the radius or diameter of the earth. 100,000 leagues, bigger from distance from here to the moon. It's like huge. Okay? So, noble sir, the finest and most superb thrones exist in that universe, Miradwaja, which is the Buddha field of the Tathagata Mirapradiparaja. At that moment, the Lichavi Vimalakirti, having focused himself in concentration, this is my great frustration in life, I can't do this, it really makes me mad, performed a miraculous feat, such that the Lord Tathagata Mirapradiparaja in the universe Miradwaja sent to this universe 3,200,000 of those thrones, each of them 400,000 leagues tall, and presumably he sent the Bodhisattva level, not the Buddha ones. These thrones were so tall, spacious, and beautiful that the Bodhisattvas, the great disciples, the Chakras, that's Indra, the Brahmas, but these are Indras from different universes, Brahmas from different universes, Lokapalas, and other gods had never before seen the like. The thrones descended from the sky and came to rest in the house of the Lichavi Vimalakirti. So now we're sitting here, just imagine, and suddenly chairs that are, hundreds of thousands of miles tall, all come and are here in the house with us. But somehow they're fitting into the house that is the ordinary house. So then, the 3,200,000 league thrones arranged themselves without crowding, and the house seemed to enlarge itself accordingly. The great city of Vaishali did not become obscure. Each chair is much bigger than the whole city. Neither did the land of India, nor the world of 4 continents. Everything appeared just as it was before. So then, Lichavi Vimalakirti said to the young prince Manjushri, Manjushri, let the bodhisattvas be seated on these thrones, having transformed their bodies to a suitable size. So then there are 3 levels of people. Some bodhisattvas immediately become 4,200,000 leagues tall. Hello, Xiaoming. Ni hao. Ni hao. How are you? That's okay. Oh, sorry. Hi, hello. And then 4,200,000 leagues high. So they immediately became 4,200. Now just imagine yourself, you're suddenly 4,200,000 leagues tall. And then another group, they taught some people who had sort of a little bit magical imaginations, and they had them sit on thrones. They quickly learned how to do it, and they sat on the throne. And finally, the monks couldn't imagine this, so they couldn't sit. So then Vimalakirti said to them, Shariputra, you bow down to the Tathagata Mirapradiparaja, and you will be able to take your seat. So then they did that. Then the great disciples bowed down to the Tathagata Mirapradiparaja, and then they were able to sit on the throne. So these are Saint Arhats, great monks, but they only through faith could they temporarily become huge like that. Now, I always say, what does it mean to be huge like that? It's like, when you get initiated in a tantra, this is not a tantra, this is a sutra, but when you get initiated in a tantra, at a certain point in the initiation, you're supposed to be able to imagine that you are Vajradhara, or you are Manjushri, or you are Tara, or you are Buddha, Kshobhya, whatever it is, you are that Buddha. In other words, you're supposed to receive there the sort of imaginative pattern of yourself as if you already were enlightened. And but you're not to pretend that you are just because you are initiated in this kind of thing, but you're supposed to imagine that you are, to experience what is called the Buddha pride, or the divine pride, or a certain type of great self-confidence. Some teachings you have to be humble, and you have to feel that I have to learn something new, and something you want to be critical of your own feeling and your own understanding. Very much, it's very most important. Those main exoteric teachings are like that. But in some context, you're supposed to also drop that self-identity, and you're supposed to adopt a divine identity, or a Buddha identity, or a confident identity. Because there are certain things you cannot understand easily without giving yourself a kind of permission of that kind of confidence, if you follow me. So this being super tall, if you imagine what it means to be super tall, it's like an exoteric way of imagining yourself. I mean, if you were hundreds of thousands of miles tall, like a little tsunami or something would tickle your toe. it would be, not, like whatever, nothing much, right? Even a Death Star, you're totally at some larger dimension, in other words. So then, when they all were seated on these thrones, so he seated everybody that way, so everybody suddenly was feeling vast themselves, confident, not frightened of this and that, like we normally are, like someone's going to step on our toe or something's going to happen. We're like completely cool. Okay? So try to do that. Meditate on yourself suddenly feeling completely self-confident and unafraid of anything and completely secure, like a giant or something. Start not worrying about all kinds of things. Just imagine that. Just meditate on that. What is it? If you meditate on that, seriously, meditate on that right now. Go into meditative mode and meditate it that you are as tall as the entire solar system. Your head reaches Neptune, Pluto, Uranus. Your toes are on Mars. You're just this giant thing. And nothing could possibly bother you from the dimensions that you usually are habituated to, in which you feel kind of small and vulnerable and delicate and insecure. And the way you do a thing like that is you not only sort of tell yourself, now I'm thousands of miles tall, I'm feeling very majestic, I'm completely invulnerable to normal things, but you also, at the same time, your critical mind is functioning and noticing just how insecure you normally do feel, and how anxious, and how, I hope this doesn't go wrong, and that doesn't go wrong. Oh, I'm so worried about the other thing, and this thing, and that thing, which is the way we are, right? Habitually. And so you try to diminish all those nervous, anxious feelings of insecurity, and you try to magnify that majestic, confident, secure feeling. Okay? I mean, gigantically, preposterously secure. Preposterously. Now then, Vimalakirti begins. Okay, you meditated that for a minute? You get a little feeling of like actually posture is a big thing. Like a ballet dancer, an athlete, they don't slump over like I'm doing too much. I cracked my rib a few while ago. When you sort of adopt a certain posture, you almost feel nervous that you're adopting it because am I looking arrogant because I'm standing up straight like that, or you get a kind of thing like that, right? The dancers have a kind of wonderful way they make a gesture. Their back's very, very straight. Their neck is like that, flat there. The head is a little tucked, but sort of very good like that. And just taking that kind of, and then this posture is like, a little bit weighed down and like that. You're not breathing very well when you do that. You expand your chest and you're feeling like that. So posture is actually also affects that mood and the posture of how you would hold yourself if you were huge and gigantic, this very thing. And then your mind itself is also open in another way because you're not nervous about whatever you're going to hear about. So then when he had them sitting there, he said to Shariputra, Vimalakirti said to Shariputra, he said, Reverend Shariputra, for the Tathagatas and the Bodhisattvas, there is a liberation called inconceivable. That means you cannot imagine it. You cannot formulate it in your mind. The Bodhisattva who lives in the inconceivable liberation can put the king of mountains, Sumeru. And Sumeru, in their cosmology, is much bigger than Mount Everest. The only thing that we can compare in our modern picture of the world, culturally consensual picture of the world, is the planet itself. And the diameter of the planet is, 8,000 miles approximately? And so from South Pole to North Pole, the direct line is 8,000 miles. So can put the king of mountains, that is, pick up with the two fingers, the whole planet, holding the North Pole and the tip of this finger and the South Pole, tip of that finger. And which is so high, so great, so noble, and so vast, into a mustard seed. And a mustard seed among seeds is particularly tiny. He can perform this feat without enlarging the mustard seed, and now without shrinking Mount Sumeru / the planetary axis. So like, you're so huge like that you could pick up the whole planet Earth, and then also without shrinking it, and put it inside a mustard seed. It's like, it is inconceivable. That's what it means, inconceivable. And the deities of the assembly of the 4 Maharajas and of the entire streams of heaven do not even know where they are. That is to say, the deity realms that are attached to the planet in their way of understanding the planet. So they don't know that they've been moved and picked up by somebody and put inside a mustard seed, because they didn't get shrunk, even though in the dimensional distortion, they're going inside a mustard seed. That, Reverend Shariputra, only those beings who are destined to be disciplined by miracles see and understand the putting of the King of Mountains, Sumeru, into the mustard seed. That, Reverend Shariputra, is an entrance to the domain of the inconceivable liberation of the Bodhisattvas. Furthermore, Reverend Shariputra, the Bodhisattva lives in the inconceivable liberation. This is not even a Buddha, this is a Bodhisattva. Can pour into a single pore of his skin all the waters of the 4 great oceans, without injuring the water animals such as fish, tortoises, crocodiles, frogs, and other creatures, and without the Nagas, Yakshas, Gandharvas, and Asuras, these are kind of beings, even being aware of where they are. And the whole operation is visible without any injury or disturbance to any of those living beings. Such a Bodhisattva can pick up with his right hand this billion-world galactic universe as if it were a potter's wheel, and spinning it round, throw it beyond universes as numerous as the sands of the Ganges, like a frisbee, without the living beings thereon knowing their motion or its origin. And he can catch it and put it back in its place, without the living beings it's suspecting they're coming and going, and yet the whole operation is visible. And similarly with time, he says, Reverend Shariputra, there are beings who become disciplined after an immense period of evolution, and there are also those who are disciplined after a short period of evolution. The Bodhisattva who lives in the inconceivable liberation for the sake of disciplining those living beings who are disciplined through immeasurable periods of evolution can make the passing of a week seem like the passing of an aeon. And he can make the passing of an aeon seem like the passing of a week for those who are disciplined through a short period of evolution. The living beings who are disciplined through an inconceivable period of evolution, immeasurable period of evolution, actually perceive a week to be the passing of an aeon, and those disciplined by a short period actually perceive an aeon to be the passing of a week. So it goes on and on that it's more and more extravagant in its imagery. It's terribly extravagant. And and then that's considered to be, and then toward the end he says, Reverend Shariputra, I have shown you only a small part of the entrance into the domain of the Bodhisattva who lives in the inconceivable liberation. Reverend Shariputra, to explain to you the teaching of the full entrance into the domain of the Bodhisattva who lives in the inconceivable liberation would require more than an aeon and even more than that. And then he has this little exchange with Mahakashyapa, which we might come back to in a minute. But now I want to go to the actual sutra. Any questions so far? Anybody? When I encountered this, I never encountered this directly in reading, in the studies I had done for a couple of years, over 10 years actually, in Tibetan Buddhist texts. I had never encountered something like that. It's warm in here. And when I had to translate that, I thought, what is this? What is he talking about? You know, I mean, and then, you know, one wants to say, oh, it's all symbolic, or it's all some literary thing, or science fiction, and of course it is, totally. But what is it? You know, I was really baffled, because it's so preposterous from a materialistic point of view of size of dimensions and so on. It's completely unbelievable and preposterous. So I didn't know what to say about it. You know, when I was translating, I translated it faithfully. I was just completely mystified. And then there's this book. This is translated from one of the 3 or 4 Chinese versions of translating from the Sanskrit, and it's 1,600 pages. Well, no, it's not quite. It's 1,518 pages in English. And nobody has done a complete translation. Actually, the Sanskrit is not completely existing. The Tibetan version is probably quite similar to this. The man who translated this and I worked on part of it together, where I had the Tibetan and the Sanskrit, and we were comparing certain parts. But he went on for a year or 2 to finish it, and I had did other things. He moved to Kyoto, Osaka, and I was in America and so on. And it's unbelievable what he did. Anyway, the special, this is called the Flower Ornament or the Garland Sutra, and in it there are 3/3. There's one 2/3 section, and one 1/3 section. And a subtitle of this text, the Garland Sutra, is the usual title, but a subtitle of it is The Inconceivable Liberation. And so this text is The Inconceivable Liberation. And I tell you, I had the experience when I was working on this and when I read it, where the book itself seemed to radiate a light. It actually came out of the book and it went into my head. It was like something that you see as a special effect in a movie. Seriously, I'm not kidding. But although unfortunately, I didn't learn how to take the planet and put it in a mustard seed. Although, who wants it? What's the use of it? But the point is, there's no use to do that unless you're hiding the planet from some mean Death Star that was trying to destroy it. But what it means is some kind of the power of enlightenment, from its wisdom of knowing the nature of reality, from the subatomic and subatomic to the macro, and the compassion that comes from that wisdom is much greater than any material force. It's the greatest force in the universe. This is what they say. And although it doesn't create the universe, on the other hand, it's not the force that creates it, but because it wouldn't create it in a horrible state if it was that force. So it's not that they're saying Buddha is God. Buddha is much more than God. The Buddhas are those that can undo the damage done by gods, actually, who are egocentric, you know. And gods have a right to be a little bit egocentric. I mean, they're big gods, you know. They do a lot of stuff. They roll over in bed and crush a dozen galaxies, you know, like they really, without meaning to, you know. Then they patch it up somehow, you know. They're very powerful, very creative, but they're not omnipotent. And then they are deluded in thinking that they are the center of everything, which is the fundamental delusion, which all of you know about, right? We've gone over it over and over again. And there's a wonderful expression in the famous poem that when the gods, there's a wonderful blessing verse in Sanskrit, in a wonderful anthology of Sanskrit verses made by a Buddhist poet. And it says, "May the pleasure of the gods be to your good fortune." It's a kind of a benediction verse. Bring you good fortune. That is, the pleasure that they receive when they are bowing down to the feet of the Buddha and they see their own jeweled diadems reflected in his shining toenails. And that is particularly exquisite pleasure, because when they see their own crowns, you know, and they have like divine gems, you know, like forget 100 carats, like 1,000 carat headgear and things like that, you know. And they see it reflected in the Buddha's toes when they're bowing to the Buddha, you know. And because when they meet the Buddha, then there's another one that's a little different where they say, when they meet the Buddha, it's like a firefly in the sun. Because the Buddha connects to this deepest energy in the universe, you know, which they themselves are just some sort of individuated thing, whereas the Buddha is them too. You know, the Buddha's one with them. He's not lorded over them, really, because he's as equally them as not them. And to them, he wants to appear as something more powerful, because the big obstacle of the gods is pride, is egocentric pride. That's their obstacle. They can't learn anything, and they can't get liberated because they're so proud. Because they forget that they are also impermanent, because they're also made of parts. They're born at a certain time. They reach divinity from certain good acts that they do, generosity and so on. And they read that. Okay, anyway, I want to go to the Havatamsaka now, the actual sutra itself. And I'll just read a little bit at the beginning first. And when I read this, you can either listen, like you were listening to a reading, or you could meditate. And it's almost better to meditate, because it harnesses your imagination to visualize what they're going to say. Thus have I heard. At one time, the Buddha was in the land of Magadha, in a state of purity, at the site of enlightenment, having just realized true awareness. Yes, and the famous Chinese commentator on the Lotus Sutra, who founded the Tiantai school of Chinese Buddhism, called Zhi Yi, his name was, in the 7th century, late 6th, early 7th century, I think. He then made this sutra was taught by Buddha before he left the garden where he attained enlightenment, before he went to teach the Four Noble Truths, actually, they're saying. It's very magical, origin, source. The ground was solid and firm, having just realized true awareness. The ground was solid and firm, made of diamond, adorned with exquisite jeweled discs and myriad precious flowers, with pure, clear crystals. The ocean of characteristics of the various colors appeared over an infinite extent. There were banners of precious stones, constantly emitting shining light and producing beautiful sounds. Nets of myriad gems and garlands of exquisitely scented flowers hung all around. The finest jewels appeared spontaneously, raining inexhaustible quantities of gems and beautiful flowers all over the earth. There were rows of jeweled trees, their branches and foliage lustrous and luxuriant. By the Buddha's spiritual power, he caused all the adornments of this enlightenment site to be reflected therein. The tree of enlightenment was tall and outstanding. Its trunk was diamond. Its main boughs were lapis lazuli, actually sapphire. Right? They always mistranslate that word. Its branches and twigs were of various precious elements. The leaves spreading in all directions provided shade like clouds. The precious blossoms were of various colors. The branching twigs spread out their shadows. Also the fruits were jewels containing a blazing radiance. They were together with the flowers in great arrays. The entire circumference of the tree emanated light. Within the light there rained precious stones, and within each gem were enlightening beings, in great hosts like clouds, simultaneously appearing. Enlightening beings is the way he translates bodhisattva, which is nice, enlightening. In other words, the bodhi, instead of enlightenment, he says enlightening. That's really good, in the sense that their presence causes others to feel enlightened. But I don't like beings, I like to call them enlightening heroes, or heroines. Anyway, in each gem there were whole thousand, there are myriad numbers of sort of micro bodhisattvas. Also, by the virtue of the awesome spiritual power, the tree of enlightenment constantly gave forth sublime sounds, speaking various truths without end. The palace chamber in which the Buddha was situated was spacious and beautifully adorned. It extended throughout the 10 directions. It was made of jewels of various colors and was decorated with all kinds of precious flowers. The various adornments emanated lights like clouds. The masses of their reflections from within the palace formed banners. A boundless host of enlightening beings, the congregation at the site of enlightenment, were all gathered there. By means of the ability to manifest the lights and even conceivable sounds of the Buddhas, they fashioned nets of the finest jewels, from which came forth all the realms of action of the spiritual powers of the Buddhas, and in which were reflected images of the abodes of all beings. And by virtue of the aid of the spiritual power of the Buddha, they embraced the entire cosmos in a single thought. Their lion seats were high, wide, and beautiful. The bases were made of jewels, their nets of lotus blossoms, their tableaus of pure, exquisite gemstones. They were adorned with various flowers of all colors. The roofs, chambers, steps, and doors were adorned by the images of all things. The branches and fruits of jeweled trees surrounded them, arrayed at intervals. Clouds of radiance of jewels reflected each other. The Buddhas of the 10 directions conjured regal pearls, and the exquisite jewels in the top knots of all the enlightening beings all emanated light, which came and illuminated them. Furthermore, sustained by the spiritual power of all Buddhas, they expounded the vast perspective of the enlightened ones, their subtle tones extending far, there being no place they did not reach. At that time, the Buddha, the world-honored one, in this setting, attained to supreme correct awareness of all things. His knowledge entered into all times with complete equanimity. His body filled all worlds. His voice universally accorded with all lands in the 10 directions. People hear him always in their own language. Like space which contains all forms, he made no discrimination among all objects. And as space extends everywhere, he entered all lands with equanimity. His body forever sat omnipresent in all sights of enlightenment. Among the hosts of enlightening beings, his awesome light shone clearly, like the sun emerging, illumining the world. The ocean of myriad virtues which he practiced in all times was thoroughly pure, and he constantly demonstrated the production of all the Buddha lands, their boundless forms and spheres of light extending throughout the entire cosmos equally and impartially. He expounded all truths like spreading great clouds. Each of his hair tips was able to contain all worlds without interference, in each manifesting immeasurable spiritual powers, teaching and civilizing all sentient beings. His body extended throughout the 10 directions, yet without coming or going. His knowledge entered into all forms and realized the emptiness of all things. All the miraculous displays of the Buddhas of past, present, and future were all seen in his light, and all the adornments of the inconceivable aeons were revealed. There were enlightening beings numerous as the atoms in 10 Buddha worlds surrounding him. Their names were universally good, Samantabhadra, and then long list, which I will skip, and then long description of those bodhisattvas. Now, universally good bodhisattva is a special bodhisattva. And I'm going to read something about universally good. Well, there's a lot of things about universally good. And I have to find it. I had a version that was marked, but I don't have it with me. And he is sort of the archetypal bodhisattva of this vision, this sense of vision. The Meditation of the Enlightening Being, 176. And then it goes really elaborate, and when he, that's finished description of Buddha, and then there are all these beings of all different kinds, dragons from under the sea, gods from all different types of heavens. There are very elaborate layers of heavens in the desire realm, the form realm, or the realm of pure matter, and the formless realm. And then there are all kinds of animals, and they all come and they all sing Buddha's praises, and Buddha teaches them. It's like a whole very elaborate thing that goes on for several books. And then it comes to this one called the Meditation of the Enlightening Being Universally Good, Samantabhadra. The Enlightening Being Universally Good, the great being, but I think great hero, we should say, sat on a lion throne made of a bank of lotus flowers, and imbued with the psychic power of the Enlightened One, entered into concentration, samadhi. That's the translation of samadhi. This concentration is called the immanent body of the illuminator of thusness. The immanent meaning the illuminator of thusness is, of course, the Buddha. Thusness is the sort of nature of everything. Like that chair is just thus, which means like that. But what it means is that chair is shining with the absolute of its being unique in nirvana. So it's in a way, it's not itself, it's like itself. It's thus. You know, thus and such are different from that and this. Because thus and such, by saying like this, such as this, like this, means somehow that what it really is eluding whatever you see it as. And it's eluding that because it's empty of really being the way you see it. And so each thing is infinitely more than it seems to be. That's the idea. And the immanent body means the body of Buddha, who is the illuminator of the non-duality of everything, meaning that this all here is nirvana and has always been and always will be. And the illuminator of that is the teacher who has understood that himself or herself and who teaches it to others to enable them to understand it, because when we understand it, then we also are just thus and such. We are suchness. We are in nirvana. Even as we are in our relative being, we are in nirvana when we understand, which is, of course, not as we are. And so he entered into that samadhi called the immanent body of the illuminator of thus. And it's an immanent body because when you become a Buddha, like if you were a Buddha now in this room, you would feel that everything in this room was in your body, was your body. Like right now, I sort of stop at my elbow on the armchair, the arm of the chair. You know, this is my body and that's something else, that's a chair. But if I was enlightened, I would feel the chair is just as much my body. I would feel all of you are just my body. All of the paintings, the pillar, the pipes, the lights, it's all my body. Buddha feels everything. When you become Buddha, the whole universe, the infinite universe is your body. Your body feels infinite. But it doesn't feel infinite in a way where I'm everything because I don't see anything. It's all invisible to me or something like that. And it's just one. You're infinite in a way where, including all of the detail, all of the other people as themselves, without violating them, but they still seem to be like me. I know they think they are themselves. And even their feeling of themselves separate from everything else, it's also, I'm fully aware of that. If I'm a Buddha, I'm saying. I'm not, but I'm saying a Buddha is. So the immanent body means that this all is the Buddha's body. We are all part of Buddha's body. That's what that means. And from his perspective, in other words. Which is in all, so this concentration is called the immanent body of the illuminator of thusness, which is in all enlightened ones. It enters everywhere into the equal essence of all enlightened ones and is capable of manifesting myriad images in the cosmos, vastly and immensely, without obstruction, equal to space. All the whirling oceans of universes flow along into it. It produces all states of concentration and can contain all worlds in all directions. The oceans of lights of knowledge of all the enlightened ones come from here. It can reveal all the oceans of all conditions everywhere. It contains within it all the powers and liberations of the enlightened ones and the knowledge of the enlightening beings. It can cause the particles of all lands to be universally able to contain boundless universes. So every atom in this universe contains boundless universes itself. You go infinitely into the micro dimension and you never reach nothingness, because there's no such thing. So there are boundless universes within the particles of all lands to be universally able to contain boundless universes. It develops the ocean of virtuous qualities of all Buddhas and reveals the ocean of great vows of these enlightened ones. All the cycles of teachings of the Buddhas flow through it and are guarded and maintained by it and kept without interruption or end. This is the samadhi, in other words, that the universally good bodhisattva is there. As in this world, the enlightening being universally good entered this concentration in the presence of the world-honored one, Shakyamuni Buddha. Thus, in the same way, throughout the realm of space of the cosmos, in all directions and all times, in a subtle, unhindered, vastly expansive light, in all lands visible to the Buddha's eye, within the reach of the Buddha's power, manifested by the Buddha's body, and in each atom of all those lands, there were Buddhas as numerous as atoms in an ocean of worlds, and in front of each Buddha were universally good enlightening beings, numerous as atoms in an ocean of worlds, each also entering into this concentration in the immanent body of the illuminator of thusness in enlightened ones. That's like multiplied into every atom, subatomic, going beyond atoms. At that time, each of the universally good ones saw the Buddhas of the 10 directions appearing before them. And those Buddhas praised universally good in the same voice. Good. You are able to enter this enlightening being's concentration in the immanent body of the illuminator of thusness in all Buddhas. This is fostered in you by all the Buddhas everywhere together, by means of the power of the original vow of the illumining, realized one Vairochana Buddha. Vairochana means the shining, the solar shining Buddha. Dainichibutsu, Japanese, that giant one in Nara. Dainichibutsu means the great sun Buddha. That's Vairochana Buddha. And it is, that's just a statue of it, of course. And it is also because you cultivate the power of the practices and vows of all Buddhas. That is to say, because you can activate all the cycles of the enlightening teaching, revealing the ocean of knowledge and wisdom of all enlightened ones, universally illumine all the oceans of distinctions everywhere without exception, cause sentient beings to clear away confusion and affliction and attain purity, universally accept all lands without attachment, deeply enter the sphere of all enlightened ones without impediment, and universally expound the virtues and qualities of all enlightened ones, because you are able to enter into the true character of all things and develop knowledge and wisdom, analyze all the media of the teachings, comprehend the faculties of all living beings, and because you are able to hold the ocean of written teachings of all the Buddhas. At that time, all the Buddhas, end quote. At that time, all the Buddhas of the 10 directions then bestowed on the great enlightening being universally good the knowledge that enters into the power inherent in omniscience, the knowledge that enters into the infinity of the cosmos, the knowledge that perfects the realization of the sphere of all enlightened ones, the knowledge of the becoming and decay of all oceans of worlds, the knowledge of the full extent of the worlds of all sentient beings, the knowledge that abides in the extremely profound liberation of all enlightened ones, and the non-discriminating knowledge of all meditation states, the knowledge that enters into the ocean of all faculties of enlightening beings, the knowledge of elocution to turn the wheel of the teaching in the ocean of languages of all sentient beings, the knowledge that enters in all ways into the bodies of all oceans of worlds in the cosmos, and the knowledge that comprehends the voices of all Buddhas. As in this world, in the presence of the Buddha, the enlightening being universally good experienced the Buddha bestowing such knowledge, so in all oceans of worlds, as well as in each atom of all those worlds, so did all the enlightening beings universally good there experience this. Why? Because they had realized that state of mental focus in this way. Then the Buddhas of the 10 directions each extended, I love this one, each extended his right hand and patted universally good on the head. Their hands were each adorned with the marks of greatness, being finely webbed, emanating light, fragrance, and flames. They also produced the various wondrous tones of all Buddhas, and within it were manifested the phenomena of mystical powers, the ocean of vows of universal goodness of all enlightening beings of past, present, and future, the cycles of pure teaching of all enlightened ones, as well as the images of the Buddhas of past, present, and future. As in this world, the universally good Bodhisattva was patted on the head by all the Buddhas of the 10 directions, so in all the oceans of worlds and in each atoms of those worlds, the enlightening beings universally good there were patted on the head by the Buddhas of the 10 directions. Then the enlightening being universally good arose from that concentration. When he did so, he rose from the media of oceans of concentrations numerous as atoms in all oceans of world. For example, he rose from the medium of concentration of skillful knowledge, realizing that the worlds of past, present, and future have no distinction in the succession of instants. He rose from the medium of concentration of knowledge of all the subtlest and most minute constituents of all universes in all times. He rose from the medium of concentration of the manifestation of all Buddha fields of past, present, and future. He rose from the medium of concentration revealing the dwelling places of all living beings. He rose from the medium of concentration of knowledge of various differences in locations of the universes of the 10 directions. He rose from the medium of concentration of knowledge of boundlessly vast clouds of Buddha bodies existing in every atom. He rose from the medium of concentration of explanations of the ocean of inner principles in all things. When the enlightening being universally good rose from such medium of concentration, all the enlightening beings each found oceanic clouds of concentration, numerous as atoms in an ocean of worlds, found oceanic clouds of spells, oceanic clouds of techniques to teach everything, oceanic clouds of ways of felicitous expression, oceanic clouds of practices, oceanic clouds of lights from the knowledge of the treasury of virtues of all who realize thusness, oceanic clouds of non-discriminating techniques of the powers, knowledges, and wisdom of all enlightened ones, oceanic clouds of Buddhas, each manifesting myriad lands in each and every pore, oceanic clouds of enlightening beings one by one manifesting descend from the palace of Tushi to heaven to be born on earth and become an enlightened Buddha, turn the wheel of the teaching, and enter into ultimate nirvana, all as numerous as atoms in an ocean of worlds, and so forth. That's why I always say when I recommend this text to people, which everyone should have a copy, you can only swim in it. You cannot read it. You can only swim in it. It is so incredible. And it takes your imagination and it just blows all the fuses in a way, depending on, so it's a different way, of going into emptiness. The Prajnaparamita way is where you use critical analysis and you take everything apart down to the subatomic, down to the subatomic, down to the wave particle paradox, and then it all seems to disappear, and then its disappearance disappears, and then it's back like a reflection of a moon in the water, like everything made of glass, like transparent. And then that's when you're getting into sort of non-duality. And that's the Prajnaparamita direction. And then once you have that foundation, then the thing comes together in an amazing way where everything becomes possible. And you shatter all dimensions and you shatter all distinctions, like where, like in your own hand, like there's many atoms, and then in the atoms of the hand, each atom has infinite Buddha verses and millions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and Samantabhadra's in every atom in your hand, and Samantabhadra's like, okay, rooting you on, cheering you on, you're crawling with Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Everything is, it's like unbelievable, actually, incredible. It's like, the scientists are really getting into it. That thing recently where they had these two weird sensors, one in Texas and one in Washington State. And they were 1 or 2 miles, some sort of laser beams going back and forth between mirrors at a certain very narrow band. And then if there was some gravitational vibration, it would make them twitch just a little bit because of their great sensitivity. And then they chronicled the collision of 2 black hole vortices, like 1 million years. Or you know what? I'm really allergic to you. I love you. This is the new mascot. But I'm so allergic to you, I can't actually pet you. If I do, I'm done for. My eye will start watering. It's very sweet. We call him Mitak. Mitak. His name is Mitak. Fire tiger, he is. He's a fire tiger. I know you're Samantabhadra too, I know that. Just I'm allergic to your particular Samantabhadra. My Samantabhadra, which would not be possible actually. But anyway, so that's like an amazing thing, this whole idea of gravitational waves, and it was because it'll take light years to get here, this vibration through gravitational field, not light field. And by making these things, these laser beams like twitch just a fraction of a tiniest dimension, and simultaneously in the 2 places, from whatever their model of it is, they figured that was these two vortices collided. Of course, a black hole can't collide because nothing can bang into a black hole, it swallows everything. But then they create a huge mass around it, which is slowly being swallowed into it, supposedly. Although then where does it go? Then nobody knows. I think these people know, actually. Samantabhadra's in the middle of the black hole. There's no nothing. Nothing ever becomes nothing. Or rather, only nothing is nothing, and therefore it's not there. So it's just create extreme compression, and then it'll expand again, of course. But it's amazing. So then they have, after the universal rain of these 10 kinds of clouds of jewels, at that time, by the spiritual power of all the Buddhas and the power of universally goods concentration, all oceans of worlds in the 10 directions trembled. Each world was arrayed with precious elements, and gave forth wondrous sound explaining all things. And on each Buddha in the ocean of sights of enlightenment where the masses gathered, everywhere there rained 10 kinds of clouds of regal jewels, clouds of beautiful gold and star jewels, jewels like precious discs descending, shining light jewels, jewels of the treasury manifesting the images of enlightening beings, jewels extolling the names of Buddhas, jewels of brilliant light illuminating the sights of enlightenment in Buddha fields everywhere, jewels whose light reflects the various miracles everywhere, jewels praising the virtues of all enlightening beings, jewels with a light that shines like the sun, jewels whose delightful music is heard everywhere. After the universal rain of these 10 kinds of clouds of jewels, all the Buddhas emitted lights from their pores, and in the light rays spoke verses. Universally good is present in all lands, sitting on a jeweled lotus throne, beheld by all. He manifests all psychic powers and is able to enter infinite meditations. The universally good always filled the universe with various bodies flowing everywhere, with concentration, psychic power, skill, and strength, in a universal voice, teaching extensively without hindrance. And it goes on like that. Universally good, fellows, physically is like space, abiding by reality, not a land, according to the heart's desires of beings, manifesting all kinds of embodiments equal to all. Universally good, abiding at peace in great determination, thus attain these infinite spiritual powers in any lands of all Buddha bodies, manifesting his form going there. All the myriad oceans are boundless. He reproduces his body infinitely and dwells there. All lands of his manifestation are purified, and in an instant are seen many aeons. Universally good lives peacefully in all lands. The spiritual powers he displays are incomparable. The trembling extending everywhere causes those who look to be able to see. The knowledge, virtue, and powers of all Buddhas, their various great qualities he has all fulfilled. By the medium of techniques of all meditations, he shows his past enlightening acts. Such independence inconceivable, it's manifest in the lands of the 10 directions, to reveal the universal entrance of all meditations in the clouds of Buddha light. His praises are sung. So that's just at the beginning. Then, the basic structure of it, in the first 2/3 of the book, there are 52 stages of the Bodhisattva, not just 10 stages, but 52 stages where you get to Buddhahood from when you first enter the Bodhisattva stages. And before the Bodhisattva stages, well, actually some of those 52, I think, before you enter what's called the vision path. There's 5 paths usually, which fit both Theravada and Mahayana. Path of accumulation, which means doing meritorious things for many millions of lifetimes, and the path, and also developing wisdom and intelligence for many lifetimes. Then there's the path of preparation or application, where you put that all to work to really go deeply into discovery of the self. And that has 4 main phases, which are called warmth, tolerance, peak, and world triumph. But then that world triumph, therefore, is sort of like the last egocentric state of sort of, because you're breaking through into seeing the relativity of the self, and that there is no absolute self, and that therefore you free yourself from the prison of thinking that you're an absolute self, and you reach into the first visceral realization of selflessness. And when you reach the first visceral realization, which is where, in other words, in a way, you brave the threshold experience, which is a fearful moment that you have after peak. You have this fearful moment, like diving off a high diving board or something, that you're going to lose yourself because you feel like you're losing yourself. You don't know who you are anymore or something, because you've seen through every sort of form of yourself. And you keep looking at different notions of your identity that arise, and they keep dissolving under analysis. And then there's this moment where you feel frightened that you're going to feel like you're nothing, and you're going to lose your mind, and you'll never return to anything that you'll recognize, and you'll be lost, and you'll be crazy, right? There's a fear, or you might die even. You might disappear. You might fall into the void. You have a frightening thing like that. It's called the Great Death, actually. But when you push past that, and the key to pushing past that in your at a critical prajna paramita, transcendent wisdom type of meditation, is actually an inference, a reasoning. And the reasoning is that I can't become nothing, that there is no disappearing from the universe, that there is no nothing. So even though I feel like I'm becoming nothing, that itself is an illusion. And that knowledge, that reasoned, that inference actually, enables you to overcome your fear and to let go, and jump into the void, sort of, psychically. And then, of course, what happens is your relational self is like whoopee, feels suddenly connected and draws energy from everywhere and feels buoyed up in the vast clear light of the void. In other words, you jump right through the seeming void into the clear light. And then the clear light is everything, and you are everything, you're everywhere, you have that feeling. And that's where you become what they call in Buddhism, you no longer are an alienated individual, which is what the common person, people always translate that as common person, but actually it's so brilliant. The word is pratyajna in Sanskrit, sosokyo in Tibetan. And that word in old Vedic place meant someone who was of low caste and was separate, alienated in the sense that they couldn't come to the Vedic ceremony. Like they couldn't come to church because they were subhuman. And they were called pratyajna, which means a separated person, meaning separated from the cult of the main society, of the Vedic society. So the Buddha took that term, which was used in the sort of classist, hierarchical Vedic society, and he said, everyone is a pratyajna. Every ordinary self-centered person who thinks they are absolutely different from everyone else is alienated, therefore, from everybody else and the universe, because they think they're separate. And they're suffering because they're worried, what is the universe going to do to me? Or they're frustrated because they can't swallow and control and dominate or own the universe, right? Desire and fear and hatred, and desire and greed. And so he took that term and he said that's a psychological term, and it means someone who is still stuck with the intrinsic identity habit, meaning the absolute identity habit. I'm really me, and that's really different from all of you. And therefore, I'm alienated from you. And also, when I feel that way, when I'm such an alienated person, I think you are also all alienated, because naturally, however you feel you are, you see everyone else that way. That's automatically, subliminally speaking. That's why a paranoid person or like a warrior or killer, they think everybody's trying to kill them because they want to kill others. Do you follow me? They always project that others have the same subjectivity they do. So then the path of application was where you put all the wisdom and merit that you've accumulated and you go deep into the self, and then you become what they call the opposite of an alienated individual is a noble being. That's what Buddha then changed the meaning of the word noble, Arya, which was originally a racial term, then it was a class term. And as noble, it's class. And that person, in the older form, they were in the Vedic sacrifice. They were a Brahmin or a merchant or a king or a warrior. And they were class nobles. And then there were all those beings outside who were separate beings. So Buddha took the noble thing, and he made it a psychological state of a person who has realized the equality of themselves and others by realizing the relatedness of the self to other selves, and that there's really no real separation of selves, if you follow me. So therefore, it's the person who senses the heartbeat of the other person as of equal value to their own heartbeat, right? And which is on the way to full enlightenment. It's the first step of enlightenment. It leads you to the third path, which is the vision path. Then you go on that vision and meditation path, and then you reach the path of no more learning, which is arhatship in Theravada and is Buddhahood in the Mahayana. So that's why, psychologically and scientifically speaking, according to Buddhist psychology, the female of the humans, of the mammal species in general and the human species in particular, is more advanced toward the noble status psychologically, because the female has a more natural ability to identify with the other as equal to themselves. And of course, we know mothers will give their lives to their young, but more, and that's great. But there's a sense of feeling equal and the same as the other, the ability to completely expand their sense of identification to identify with the other being. Because after all, the enlightened being is the being that identifies with every being, expands infinitely, becomes the mother of all the beings, in that sense, of all the children of the Buddha. So Samanta Bhadraska, but of course then, well, it goes way beyond it. Then, formation of the world, there's this amazing thing called then Vairochana. We won't have time if I go on like that. What I want to jump to, we don't have that much time, so I'm going to jump to, there's this one thing that I really like here where, in this sutra called the 10 concentrations, which are before the 10 stages of the Bodhisattva, I think, or after them. Yeah, of these 52 stages, there's 5 sets of 10, and then two things, 2 more things, 52. So the 10 concentrations are, after the 10 stages. The 10 stages are the famous ones, that connect with the 10 transcendences of the, wisdom, etc., generosity, morality, tolerance, patience, etc., wisdom. And then 10 concentrations are a little more subtle level at the 10th stage, a subdivision of the 10th stage. And at the beginning of that, there's a Bodhisattva named Universal I, and he wants to know, about universally good, because he's very impressed about him, and he speaks to Buddha. And he said, I want to ask the completely enlightened one. He's there with a whole bunch of thousands of millions of them are all there. And they ask the world-honored one, that is the Buddha, how many concentrations and liberations have the enlightening being universally good and the enlightening beings who live by the vows and practice of universal good attained, that they may enter and exit and abide at rest in the great concentrations of enlightening beings, and by skillfully entering and emerging from the inconceivable vast state of concentrations of enlightening beings, are able to command all concentrations with ceaseless mystical powers? That's his question. So then Buddha said, that's really great. You're asking all that. But the thing is, why don't you ask universally good yourself? You should ask him. He will explain to you these concentrations, powers, and liberations. And then the enlightening beings of the assembly, hearing the name of universally good, immediately attained, just from the name, they attained inconceivably infinite concentration. Their minds unobstructed, silent, and unstirring. Their knowledge became immeasurably vast. Their realm of experience most profound without compare. They saw countless Buddhas before them, attained the power of the enlightened, and of the same nature as the enlightened, they clearly perceived all the past, future, and present. Because that's another thing. Time is illusory too. And when you become enlightened, you're present in all time. The past is just as present, and the future. And the idea that there's this one line of time and you're only in one instant in the middle of it is like a part of the delusion. You're no longer trapped there. So they had, just by hearing his name, they had a big freak out and had a big samadhi. But then they said, where is it? Then the enlightening being universal I said to the Buddha, where is the enlightening being universally good now? And the Buddha replied, the enlightening being universally good is in the assembly, at this enlightenment site near me. He has never moved. Like he's right here. What do you mean, where is he? Right here. And then they said, we can't find him. Then Buddha said, well, that's so, but why can you not see him? Because the dwelling place of the enlightening being universally good is most profound and inexplicable. Universally good has attained boundless aspects of knowledge. He's entered the lion emergence concentration. Actually, I don't like that translation. It's the sensenge. What is that? When a cat or a lion gets up when they've been sleeping, they stretch, a cat will stretch, its haunches will go up and back and then stretch like that. That's what it is. It's not really emergence, it's like that. It's the lion. Simha Vinjambita, that's what it's called. Simha Vinjambita. It has another meaning too, and so I won't get into it. But it's I had a teacher who was very funny. We were doing at a conference with a bunch of monks from a Chinese temple who had the practice of not lying down at night. They were sitting up in a box. But they were sharing rooms with some of the other people in the conference because we were in some big mansion somewhere, but there weren't enough rooms. So then one of the people who was lying in the bed, and next day in the conference, people said, well, how was it spending the night with the meditating guy in the box? She said, well, it was okay, but actually they sleep in the box. And that one snored. So then people were laughing, and a couple of monks were a little embarrassed. And then the Lama said, oh, that's the lion expansion samadhi he was doing. That wasn't a snore. That was very cute. I like that. And so anyway, so he said, he entered the lion emergence concentration, attained unexcelled freedom of action, entered pure non-obstruction, and developed the 10 powers of the enlightened. His body is the matrix of the cosmos on which all the enlightened ones concentrate together. In an instant, he can thoroughly realize and enter the unfragmented knowledge of the Buddhas of all times. That is why you cannot see him. And then again, when they just heard of that, they had more samadhis, and they still haven't seen him, But they still say, but I still don't see him, I want to see him. So then finally, Buddha says, then the enlightening being universally good, by the powers of his liberated spiritual faculties, manifested physical bodies in accord with their needs, causing all those enlightening beings to see universally good near the Buddha, sitting on a lotus seat in the midst of this assembly of all the enlightening beings. They also saw him with all the Buddhas in all other worlds, continuously coming from there. They also saw him with all those Buddhas, expounding all practices of enlightening beings, revealing the path of omniscience, explaining all enlightening beings' spiritual powers, distinguishing all enlightening beings' charismatic virtues, and showing the Buddhas of past, present, and future. And they were just all flipped out, they bowed down to him and so on. And then later they tell each other more great things. So that's another great moment. I thought that was a great moment. Because he was there, because they didn't see him because he was in all of them. He was in every atom of them, you follow me? He was this sort of cohesive samadhi in the midst of all of them. Now, the next thing I want to do, so then there's 52 things, right? Then the last third of it is called entry into the realm of reality. And what that sutra is where this young yuppie, he's a banker's son, Setiputta, and he gets inspired, he meets Buddha, and he gets inspired to seek enlightenment. So Buddha says, well, you should go and find a lot of kalyana mitras, spiritual friends. Remember, I think I told you in another class about how the guru figure in Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, is that of a friend. It isn't a big boss, a big like patriarchal father figure. It shouldn't be. I mean, people make them into that, but it shouldn't be. It should be a friend, kalyana mitra, because it's emphasizing that you have to make your own understanding and progress. You can't just depend on someone else to help to save you. So he says you should go find lots of kalyana mitras, these spiritual friends. And so this yuppie, Sudara, his name is, he goes and he finds different friends, and he finds 50 of them. And among them, the last 41 to 50 are 10 goddesses, and they're called the 10 night goddesses. So these are the dark goddesses of dark energy and dark matter, I think. They are dark energy, dark matter goddesses. And they include Buddha's mother, Buddha's ex-wife, the goddess of Lumbini, where he's born, Lumbini Garden, the goddess of Kapilavastu, where he grows up, and a whole bunch of amazing goddesses. And he meets them all, and they tell him different things. And particularly, he meets the Buddha's mother. And each of he meets 52 teachers, spiritual friends. And each teacher tells him some samadhis that connect to one of the 52 stages in the earlier part of the sutra. That's the sort of larger structure of it. And actually, the Chinese are the ones who really developed a commentarial tradition of this sutra. Obviously, they had it in India, but we don't have really a record of people writing that much on it. I think probably because they moved into Tantra around the time that the Indian imagination expanded and this became such a big thing. And then China didn't really get Tantra much, so because of their thing about women. And so, but they got this sutra, and then they made a big thing, they analyzed, and the great masters in China did really great works about this sutra. So they explained that. And then there's a wonderful thing. One of the very short commentaries about the Huayan Jing, or the Huayan Jiao, the teaching of the Huayan, or Huayan Shu, I guess. That's Japanese, Huayan Jiao, Chinese. By a guy called Du Shun, who was one of the great Huayan master patriarchs. His name is Du Shun. And he has 3 stages which connect to the Avatamsaka. And the first stage is where he calls Guan Zhen Kong, meaning view true emptiness. And that's really like same as Prajnaparamita, where everything dissolves under analysis, and a state of dissolution also dissolves, and you're back, and it's all different. And that's the first stage. And then there's the second one, which is he called Li Shi Wu Ai. And my tones are no good. I'm sorry, I don't know, Li Shi Wu Ai, I don't remember, But Li Shi in English, you write Lishwuai. Li Shi Wu Ai. And what that means is mutual non-obstruction of principle and phenomenon. Principle being the absolute or emptiness, selflessness, and or truth or reality or whatever, and shura meaning phenomenon. So that's non-duality. They mutually do not obstruct. So that's that sort of nirvana is samsara, samsara is nirvana. That's the second stage, and a very deep stage. But then the third stage is the inconceivable liberation, which is shi wu ai, which means the mutual non-obstruction of phenomenon and phenomenon, which means that everything can transform into everything else. You can transform anything, and that's like the sumaru in a mustard seed. If you master that, you can shape. Now, why would you want to develop powers to shape the world? Well, the only reason you do as a Buddha is to be able to help other beings more effectively. Like instead of just talking to them or giving them a book to read or whatever it is, you would want to actually change things, change the whole environment to be all teaching them, so that at every aspect of their life was teaching them. The whole planet was teaching them. The garden, the ground, the plants, everything that happened was an enlightening experience to them. So for that reason, all these skills or liberative arts, in my Vimalakirti I used to translate it as liberative technique, upaya, but nowadays I translate it as liberative art. Because when you reach that li shi wu ai, the mutual non-obstruction of principle and phenomenon, and the non-duality of everything, you then realize, so when you disappear, when your ordinary habitual absolutized identity disappears, which you never had. You always only had a relational identity that was changed in connection with what you related to. But you thought you had an absolute unchanging one. But when that goes, then you begin to realize that everything in you yourself are a constant work in progress. You're a constant construction. You yourself are a work of art. So you therefore become, rather than just disappearing and I'm nowhere and nobody, I'm floating in space, which is how people misunderstand it. And they think, oh, now I can just flop around because it's all space or something. It's all nirvana, so I can do anything. That's really wrong. In fact, it's all nirvana, so you have nothing to do, actually. You're totally blissed out no matter what. And therefore, the only thing worth doing is bumping up against anybody who isn't in nirvana as far as they're concerned and trying to help them see that they are. That's all that's left to do. Because you do see, when you feel you're fully nirvana, you feel everybody else is. You see them all perfectly fine. They're all totally good, no matter what's going on. Because there's samantabhadras in every atom. They're made of Buddhas. It's like everything is bliss. But then when they don't think so, and they're like having a horrible time, then it doesn't disturb your bliss to work on helping them realize they don't have to have that horrible time. Do you follow me? So that's what you do. So that's then where you have this kind of inconceivable liberation for a person who you can make a week, they said a week, but some professors, what one of my students once said, some professors can make an hour's lecture seem like an aeon. And then sometimes when you're in a fabulous film like The Matrix or Avatar on that beautiful planet, then the 2 hours of the movie seems like a minute, and you just want more, you know. So he's making 2 sequels, and you wish he'd hurry up. But anyway, so I want to go to universally good. Yeah, where he meets Buddha's mother. I want to find where he meets the mother. He meets a lot of his teachers are women and men and so on, and monks and workers, and there are all kinds of people, all different walks of life. Where is it? I found a night goddess here. I'm sorry, I had it marked somewhere else. Oh, Sarva Vriksha Prapulana Sukha Sambhasvasa. Someone who dwells in the bliss of the flowering of all trees. That's one of the goddesses. But that's not yet the mother. She's amazing. He asks each one what are their samadhis, you know, and then they tell him their different samadhis. And they tell him in former lives what happened to them and how they discovered their knowledge, these night goddesses. I love one who she's a night goddess, and she goes everywhere where beings are in the dark, and she sees that they don't fall down, they don't fall in a hole, and she tries to encourage them not to. She surrounds all beings on the whole planet. Jagad-raksha pranidhana virya prabhaya, and we're getting there now. And I like that one. So everywhere where people are stumbling through the darkness, she tries to go and lead them and guide them, without revealing herself, of course. Oh, here we go. Now, oh no, that's the goddess of Lumbini, who is describing the birth of the Buddha, which is amazing. But I wanted to have him actually meeting, and then the Buddha's wife, Gopa, he meets. And Gopa and Maya Devi, what they do is they go every world where Buddha's born, and they go and do this same work with him. You know, they're just as far out as him. And they make it possible. Okay. Yeah, here it is. Maya. Then Sudana, turning to go to Lady Maya, having attained knowledge from investigation of the sphere of Buddhahood, thought to himself, how can I meet, associate with, and learn from spiritual benefactors whose senses are detached from all worlds, who do not abide anywhere, whose bodies are beyond all attachments, who have set out on the unimpeded path, who have purified the spiritual body, who skillfully project bodily forms by the illusion of physical action, who observe the world as being within the illusion of knowledge, who are physical embodiments of vows, whose bodies are made of mind by the power of Buddha, whose bodies are not born and do not perish, whose bodies are neither real nor unreal, whose bodies neither come nor go, whose bodies neither become nor disintegrate, whose bodies are of one form which is formless, whose bodies are non-dual and freed from attachments, whose bodies have no resting place, whose bodies have no extinction, whose bodies are like reflections and have no difference, whose bodies are like dreams in action, whose bodies are like the images in a mirror, whose bodies stand tranquilly everywhere equally, whose bodies are emanations pervading all directions, whose bodies are continuous through past, present, and future, whose bodies are neither physical nor mental and are indivisible, whose bodies are beyond the range of vision of all worldlings, whose secret being can only be known to the vision of the eye of universal good, whose realm of action is unobstructed like space. As he was engaged in these thoughts, a city goddess named Jewel Eyes, surrounded by a group of sky goddesses, showed herself in the sky, her body adorned with various adornments, holding a basket of celestial flowers of many shapes and colors, and spoke to Sudana in these terms as she scattered them before him. You should guard the city of mind by not dwelling on enjoyment of mundane objects. You should adorn the city of mind by concentrating on the 10 powers of the enlightened. You should clean the city of mind by getting rid of jealousy, envy, and guile. You should extinguish the burning of the city of mind by meditating on all truths. You should expand the city of mind by increasing the flow of great energy and preparing for omniscience. You should protect the dwellings, storehouses, and facilities of the city of mind by command of the vast spiritual palace of all concentrations, attainments, meditations, and liberations. You should illumine the city of mind by absorbing universal transcendent wisdom in the assemblies gathered around all Buddhas, etc., etc. It goes on. I want to get to Maya. Anyway, there's several introductions, and then they in this form. Oh yeah, wait. Sudana saw Lady Maya. Oh yeah, then Sudana, practicing as he had been taught by the supernatural being Fine Eye. It's another goddess who gives him some teachings, preparing him to meet Lady Maya, Maya Devi, the mother of Buddha. Saw a great jewel lotus spring up from the ground in front of him. In the heart of the lotus, he saw a tower called Chamber Containing the Cosmos, beautifully made of gold and jewels. Inside the tower, he saw a lotus calyx throne made of wish-fulfilling jewels, set on jeweled figurines of the chiefs of all realms of beings, arrayed with many kinds of precious adornments and bells, which emanated sounds telling of the principle of universal love, the names of the Buddhas of past, present, and future, the teachings of all Buddhas, and the vows of all enlightening beings. It was also arrayed with rows of jewels which reflected the manifestations of Buddhas and the succession of births of all Buddhas of past, present, and future. Rows of radiant jewels showing the lights of the activities in all Buddha lands throughout space and the effecting of all miracles, emanating the auras of light of all Buddhas, emanating apparitions like the chiefs in all worlds making offerings to Buddhas, and jewels filling the cosmos in every moment with the mystic projections of the universally good enlightening being. Every object on the throne of inconceivable qualities emanated celestial eulogies of the enlightened. The throne was also surrounded by an inconceivable number of seats arrayed with jewels. Sudana saw Lady Maya Devi sitting on that throne, her physical form transcending all in the triple world, having gone beyond all states of being, facing all beings, appearing according to their mentalities, unstained by any world, being made of myriad virtues, in the likeness of all beings, appearing in such a way as to please all beings, adapted to develop and guide all beings, descending into the presence of all beings, appearing continuously to beings at all times like the sky, appearing to all beings to be permanent, not going anywhere, not passing away from all worlds, not coming anywhere, not coming into existence in any world, unoriginated, absorbed in the equanimity of non-origination, unextinguished, involved in the affairs of all worlds, not real, having attained suchness, not false, appearing in accord with the world, not in motion, being divorced from death and birth, not annihilated because of the non-annihilation of the nature of reality, undefinable, being beyond any manner of speaking, uniform, her auspicious characteristics issuing from indefinability, like a reflection appearing according to the minds of all beings, like magic made of the magic of knowledge. Maya means magic, Maya Devi. Doesn't mean illusion, it means magic. Like specks of light, moment to moment sustained by the thoughts of beings, like a shadow bound to all beings by commitment, dreamlike appearing to beings in all universe, throughout all universes, being in nature pure in space, mixed pure as space, issuing from universal compassion, engaged in the protection of the community of beings, issuing from the door of non-obstruction, pervading the cosmos in each instant, infinite, dwelling in all worlds without defilement, measureless, transcending all manner of verbal expression, non-dwelling, manifesting to guide all beings, unfixed, appearing magically in the body of a living being, not really existing, made by the magic of aspiration, unsurpassed, being beyond all worlds, unreal, being a manifestation of tranquility, unproduced, connected to beings according to their acts, like a wish-fulfilling jewel, fulfilling the commitment to satisfy the wishes of all beings, without discrimination, based on the thoughts of all beings, beyond conception and knowable to all beings, based on resolve, never leaving the mundane, pure, non-conceptual, like thusness. In this form did Sudana see Lady Maya, manifesting a physical body that was not form, being a reflection of form, not feeling. So it goes on and on like that. It goes on and on. He sees her in the minds of all beings, he sees her. He sees her connected to thusness. And then he comes to her and stood respectfully before her. There's a lot more description, but then respectfully before her, and he says, "Noble one, really you should say noble lady, Manjushri inspired me to seek supreme perfect enlightenment and directed me to attend spiritual benefactors. So I have been approaching spiritual friends, benefactors, and in the course of doing so, I have come to you. Now please tell me, noble one, how an enlightening being may achieve omniscience while carrying out the practice of enlightening beings. She said, I have attained an enlightening liberation, quote, magical manifestation of knowledge of great vows, end quote. Imbued with this liberation, I am the mother of all enlightening beings in their final existence, in all the worlds of this world ocean, where Vairochana Buddha's miraculous manifestation of birth as an enlightening being in the final existence takes place. All those enlightening beings grow in my belly and come forth from my right side. So they have magical cesarean, they just come out without any cutting. So here too, in this great city of Kapilavastu, as wife of the king Shuddhodana, I became the mother of the enlightening being Siddhartha by the great inconceivable miracle of the birth of an enlightening being. At that time I was in the house of King Shuddhodana, and when the time of the enlightening being's descent from the heaven of contentment had arrived, from every pore the enlightening being emanated as many rays of light as atoms in untold Buddha lands, arrayed with the qualities of the birth of all enlightening beings, known as the light originating from the qualities of birth of all Buddhas. Those rays of light illumined the whole world, then descended on my body and entered into every pore of my body, beginning with my head. As soon as those light rays of the enlightening being, with various names, emanating magical projections of the various miracles attending the birth of an enlightening being, had entered me, they caused the spheres of light at the front of the enlightening being's light rays to be manifest in my body, and the supernal manifestations of miracles attending the birth of all enlightening beings were visible. And as soon as those light rays of the enlightening being had entered my body, I saw all the enlightening beings whose birth miracles were shown in the sphere at the front of the enlightening being's light rays, as they sat on the Buddha's lion throne at the site of enlightenment, surrounded by congregations of enlightening beings, honored by the leaders of the worlds, turning the wheel of the teaching. I also saw all the Buddhas with whom those Buddhas associated as they carried out enlightening practices in the past. I also saw mystical projections of their initial inspiration, attainment of enlightenment, turning of the wheel of the teaching, final extinction, and the pure rays of all Buddha lands, as well as the multitudes of emanation of those Buddhas pervading lands, as well as the multitudes, or pervading the cosmos in each moment of consciousness. When those rays of light of the enlightening being entered my body outreached all worlds, and my belly became as vast as space, and yet did not go beyond the human physical size. The supernal manifestations of the enlightening beings abode in the womb, everywhere in the 10 directions, all appeared in my body. And it goes on like that. It's really very far out. Super pregnancy. Totally super duper. I plan someday in some life to make a film of this, of the Buddha's life, and then I need a real special industrial light and magic special effects to show that, you know, amazing thing of Lady Maya's, you know, when she conceives the Buddha, and then she talks about how the poor thing, she's grooved out, you know, being pregnant, and all these beings and gods and things come and study with the Buddha and receive his teaching while he's in the womb, because he's already teaching, he's, you know, unceasingly teaching. But she's cool about it. She's very happy about it. But then when it's over, she just returns to Tushita heaven, not Tushita, but to Indra's heaven, where she goes, and where she lives when she's not giving birth to a Buddha somewhere, which is all that she does. Now finally, then at the end of the sutra, Sudana meets Maitreya, the future Buddha, which is his final 52nd teacher. Manjushri is the first and the 51st, but the 52nd one is Maitreya. And then he meets Maitreya at the doorway of something called the Tower of Vairochana, which is like a giant tower, like a stupa of some kind, but it's with a door, it has an interior. And then Maitreya says, oh, you've come to see me, that's nice. Would you like to see the Tower of Vairochana? Yes. Would you like to go into the Tower of Vairochana? He goes into the tower. And when he goes into the tower, he sees all the infinite lifetimes that Maitreya lived as a bodhisattva and all of the ordeals he went through and all of the heroic deeds he did. and as women and men and animals and all gods and devils and everything that he was. He sees all of that everywhere, inscribed on the walls, and then he comes to an inner courtyard inside that tower, and then in the courtyard he sees millions of other of these Vairochana towers, and he sees himself in the doorway, in the hallway going into the courtyard, in the doorway of each of those towers. And then in those towers, he's seeing the same thing he's seeing there, and then he goes in, so it's infinitely goes into internally like that. Do you follow? He stands in the door with Maitreya saying, look at this. And then he sees himself, a whole vast field of these towers, and he's in each tower, going in each one at the same time. And then in each one of them, he sees also infinite towers in there, and he's going into the door like that. So that seems to be like the place where Sudana really understands the samadhi of Samantabhadra, where you go into being present at every subatomic place. And then the sutra ends with the famous thing that the Tibetans do chant all the time in every prayer gathering, which is called the prayer of the universally good. And there are translations from the Tibetan, but he has a translation of it here. And it's like, as many Buddhas as there may be in any world, throughout the 10 directions, throughout past, present, and future, I honor them all without exception, pure in body, speech, and mind. With as many bodies as atoms in all lands, I bow to all Buddhas, with a mind directed to all Buddhas by the power of the vow of the practice of good. In a single atom, Buddhas as many as atoms sit in the midst of enlightening beings. So it is of all things in the cosmos. I realize all are filled with Buddhas. I laud all the Buddhas therein, expounding in all languages the quality of all Buddhas. So you have to learn all the languages. The qualities of all Buddhas with endless oceans of manifestations. And so on, it goes on. But the main thing is, so your Samantabhadra practice, so that's it. And it's a long prayer, it's about 40, 50 verses. I won't read it. So now we're going to meditate for a brief moment together. And you meditate that, now you're meditating sitting here on this vision of the jewel net of Indra, which is an important image, important simile, although no simile will really illustrate the inconceivability of the Shusha Wu-ai, the mutual non-obstruction of phenomenon and phenomena. That is the magical and miraculous nature of the relative. Not only based on the non-duality of the relative and the absolute, then you come around through the force of love and compassion, which is what this power is. The force of love and compassion is the magical quality and the infinitely transformable and transmutable quality of the relative. In order to really save all beings from suffering, to really make trust the force, make the light force wins, The good guys win. Good being more, the vision of good being more powerful than evil. And so meditate on this vision, on Samantabhadra. And as you're sitting meditating in Samantabhadra, then in every atom of your body and of the building and of the world around you, there's other worlds, infinitely other worlds, and there's infinite yous. There's millions of you in every atom, and you're meditating in the space there. And then inside that, infinitely, inside the body of each you, inside each atom in your body in this dimension, in all those dimensions, then it keeps repeating infinitely in the micro direction, never reaching nothingness. And so the reason you do that is that then when you do meditate, or when you do bow, or when you give a beggar $1, or when you restrain yourself from being upset, or when you catch yourself having a knee-jerk impulse, and you stop and see things from another perspective and calm and cool yourself and so forth. And everything that happens like that, you are simultaneously doing it in infinite dimensions, so that you're multiplying the merit of every good thing that you do, because you are echoing, so to speak, in a multiversal, at the micro and the macro level multiversal setting. When you become more enlightened, you will know that you're doing that. When you're more thinking this is the only real dimension that you're in, it's just an imagination. But meditating with that imagination is very, very beneficial, bit by bit, baby steps, baby steps. And the jewel net of Indra is the holographic vision of the relative universe, that everything is interreflected in everything else. So all the atoms in the universe are reflected in every atom of the universe. But in that way, each atom in the universe is essential to reflect all the other atoms and is itself reflected in all the other atoms. And so everything is totally magically interwoven in that way. That's what you reflect on. Okay, ding, 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 ding. It's very, people often ask His Holiness Dalai Lama how he can be so buoyant and cheerful and positive and hopeful and optimistic with such terrible things happening to his people. And also the world being in such a chaos, kind of like Syria and all kind of other disasters everywhere. But you can at least imagine, for if you read swim in this sutra and deal with the inconceivable liberation vision, that enlightened person like him, they feel the presence of Samantabhadra, of Vairochana, of the Buddhas and so forth, very, very much in every fiber of everything. And therefore, contrary to what some people might think, that would then make you feel like I'm cool and all those people are all screwed up. When you really feel it so thoroughly, you see all the people even who are screwed up and screwing others up, the bad ones too, equally, they're also all fine. But it's just, and so then it becomes kind of a matter of trying to correct a bunch of self-defeating crazies who are actually okay. If the bottom line is that they are actually okay. So therefore, when he says that truth will prevail, by that he doesn't mean some proposition will be better than another proposition. He means reality. The reality of these beings will come out. They will finally calm down, and so whatever it takes, some lifetime or another, they might die and kill and do this many times, many lives. But at some point, they will finally catch on to the universal good, presence of universal Samantabhadra, the infinite permeation of everything by Samantabhadra. That's what Marty's book is about, that Uttara Tantra by Maitreya, And the commentary brings it out. I mean, all these similes of the great divine drum and the cloud, they go on with that. So it's sort of a poetic, actually, Roy Zohar should have actually focused more on that text. It really is something. And so that's where they draw that. In the Tibet, the first temple ever built in Tibet, Buddhist temple, in Samye Monastery in the 8th century, the inner kora, where you go around the Buddha, not around outside the temple, but the inner one where you go in near the altar, and then you go around. It's unfortunately poorly lit. You have to have a flashlight, or in the old days, I guess, a torch. And you go around and you walk around where the main shrine is and so on. But they have the scenes of the 52 teachers of Sudana from this Avatamsaka Sutra. So it had a powerful, everywhere it went, everywhere it flowed from India, it had a really powerful impression. And even in India, the imagination of the Indian was completely blown away by it. And if you read that book, if you can read all 1,500 pages of that book, you will have it will shatter. And especially us, it's very hard for us. See, that cat was on me, it just does it right away. The eye, Especially I love that cat though, it's cute. I wish I could pet it. Anyway, our consensual reality, reinforced very much nowadays by media, but in the ancient time by religion, by the Roman corruption of Christianity, which was supposed to be very positive, supposed to be the transcendence of death. It wasn't supposed to be the rubbing death and pain in your face. It's supposed to mean that this being was unable to be killed. No one could kill him. Love cannot be killed was the original message. But then the Romans made a big fuss about the execution part. And then this is carried on by our materialism and by our, and of course, and by our authoritarian governments, hierarchies, seeking to make people feel that it's the natural way that everybody be miserable, and that the good, render unto Caesar, you have to pay these dues, right? And the good is weak, and the good is vulnerable, and the good can't win. And the bad guys are stronger, and you have to kind of hide from them or submit to them and grovel to them. Our culture is very much made of that. Expect the worst. We're afraid of bliss and happiness. If we feel happy or blissful, we feel something will go wrong, someone will get me, it might be illegal, something will happen. And we're not allowed to have it. And in Asia was same in ancient time, but then Buddha was there, closer, and he spread this thing, and they became more relaxed, and they became more gentle, and they advanced beyond where we are, no question about it. So this sort of thing, and just saying that, it doesn't help that much. It helps, but not that much. So one has to embed oneself in the narrative. One has to get used to the narrative, to swim in it, as I say. And then it actually can shatter that consensual reality, and one can come to feel, although one doesn't have to rush out and proclaim it in the street, but one can come to feel that everything is all right, And people do, Like Ray Charles, It's all right. Where does that come from? That comes from the middle of that's the black man, in America, blind man, and suffering, slavery, Jim Crow, all this kind of thing. But somewhere in his he gets the energy from his cells, the bliss in his cells. When he doesn't have Buddhism, he maybe went to church somewhere and had it from Jesus, but somewhere he gets the idea that everything is okay. And then he sings that it's all right. When we hear it, we like, it's a relief. It courses through our own cells, That's why we like that kind of music, But then we come back to our mind, and then nowadays, the media and these dominant powers, the corporations that own the media, and they put out like Fox News, etc. But all of it, it's so hopeless. And even the environment people are going out to save the environment, and then they all tell you it's already hopeless. Everything's going to melt anyway, At least we can make it maybe melt a little bit slower or something, But they run around saying about how the oceans are already too hot and the coral reefs are already gone and blah, blah, blah. And then everyone listens to that, and they don't really think about it, except for the Pentagon. No, because they know if the glaciers in Tibet melt, for example, then those monsoon cycle countries with with billions of people in them, will have long dry periods with no water. Nothing in the rivers, because between monsoons. And they will all be running crazy in all directions. Because they won't be able to grow food. They will be starving and dying, and it'll be terrible what will happen. I mean, it really is a crisis right now. And we could and should and will do something now, I think. We will. People will. They'll wake up. They'll read the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Flower Ornament Sutra, and shape up. They have to. No way out. On the other hand, if the Death Star comes and destroys the entire planet, we'll all be reborn on another planet, and we'll be born maybe and we'll catch the cycle next time earlier in the other multiverse, The alternative realities will enter. None of it. The materialists who expect it all cease and when they all die and then there'll all be nothing and that'll be the end of the human experiment. This just won't happen either. But the thing is, people assume that and then people who uphold the idea that it's healthy to be realistic, and realistic means everything sucks. And so to guard yourself and defend yourself and take care of yourself and don't worry about other people, this kind of thing. You can't do everything. Oh yeah, you feel sorry for them, but you can't do anything. So don't strain too hard. And those people who think everything is going to be fine, while they're just kidding themselves. And then they're just like psychos. They just think it's all fine, no problem, and then they won't be able to be useful. And so the only way you're going to do anything about it is to get really mad and go crazy. That's also wrong. The people who feel it's already all right, and no matter what happens, live or die, it's all right, they'll be more energetic to try to help other people live. Because it's much better to live. It's really boring to die, and then you have to get reborn, you have to get out of the womb, and then you hope you have a good mom, and she lives in a good neighborhood, she has a good this, and you go to school, whatever. That's a long and boring effort. Go back to this dumb school, meet that stupid teacher, that one, learn this language, that language, get cranked on the head in the hockey game. It's a total pain before you find out what it's all about. Whereas if you find it out now, you're way ahead of the game. Any question? Come on, question. We have a few minutes. I managed to stop. I always run over the time. Yes? Yes, my philosopher. There she is, Ozden.
My name is Banu. It's last name.
Your name is what?
Banu.
Bahul.
Banu. Just call me.
Balu.
Yeah, Banu.
Balu. That's an awesome name. Balu. Yes, Balu. What?
So, I think you said before, and I think in the Vimalakirti Sutra somewhere, it was saying that until every being is liberated, there is no liberation. I was just wondering...
Until every being is what?
Until every being is liberated,
Yes.
there is no liberation.
Yes.
I was just wondering whether Mahayana Buddhists believe that is an attainable
Of course.
state.
Absolutely.
That's infinite number of...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, you know, they have a great way out in the hermeneutic principle. The only definitive meaning teaching is the pure negation of emptiness, freedom, selflessness, you know, nirvana, this sort of thing. Freedom from suffering. That's the only definitive meaning teaching. All teachings about relative reality are contextual. They're valid within the context. So any of them, if you push them with what is called ultimacy, analytic, rational cognition, which could be combined with concentration to be vipassana meditative, if you do, they will dissolve under analysis. So like all beings and endless and not endless, all of it will end up dissolving under analysis, actually. Because it's all describing relative processes. So they're valid in a context, and one is more valid than another, but none of them are absolutely valid. But the way out of the, Buddha attained Buddhahood under the tree, and actually in this one he already was Buddha. He was Vairochana Buddha manifesting as Siddhartha on this planet, and on many other planets, according to their sci-fi vision. But when you become a Buddha, then all time is present to you. So you're not abandoning beings because you see the other beings where they will become Buddhas. Because you know their future and their past. And not only do you see that as if it was an automatic fatalistic sort of thing, that they're automatically just going to become Buddhas. Because automatically, they'll just carry on with bad habits, go up and down, and the force of bad habit is so strong. They won't necessarily. So then you manifest because you never leave. You are all the beings. You're this inconceivable, you're the ground, you're the fiber of every being's cells, subatomic energies. And so you're going to shape things around them in such a way as to optimize their getting to their own fruition as fast as possible. And also you see that you will successfully be able to do so, and you knew just when that will happen, and that time when it happens, you're totally aware of it. So, because to you all the time is equal, you're not abandoning them, they're done. But you know that for them, it's like it's going to take time. Because they're caught in thinking time is really real, that I'm going along in time. They're thinking that, you follow me. So that's it. That's my consolation. I told you my consolation prize. You heard it many times, right? No? My consolation prize, I'm always in misery. I have a cracked rib, and I'm allergic to the cat, and I'm terrible. Terrible. I'm just as miserable as everybody in America is supposed to be. I am. Absolutely. But my consolation, which is, I don't know, it could be my psychosis, but my consolation is I'm sure I'm going to get to nirvana because I've been changing my culture a little bit with this literature and with contact with these people who have this different culture, which is a more positive culture. And therefore, I'm certain I will attain nirvana. And when I do, then all my past moments, I will realize already we're nirvana. So that's my consolation is that right now, talking to Balu, you're like out of Kim, isn't the tiger called Balu in Kim?
It's not Banu, it's Banu.
Balu?
Yeah.
Oh, you go Balu. But in Kim, isn't the tiger Balu?
But not that
In that Kim, Jungle Boy. It's
bear.
what?
The bear, no?
What?
It's the bear.
The bear is called Balu?
Bear.
Oh, I love bear. Look, I have a bear right here. I live in Bearsville. Look, see, that's a bear. And really, Balu it's called. And you're Balu. So your parents must have read the Jungle Boy. Definitely. So you understand, standing right here with you, Balu, talking to you and all of you, is nirvana. And I will enjoy it to that degree retroactively. So that's what consoles me, the fact that I'm miserable now. That's true. I got it. That's true. I'm getting older though, that's true. So, okay, so that's the thing. And I've been working on this book, which I didn't intend to work on for 2 months, which is based on Maitreya's. You know the story of Asanga? Arya Asanga? You ran into it. He's the one who does the Vijnanavara, the idealism part in the Lekshaning book. He's the right-hand statue, on Buddha's right hand, on our left hand, the two statues in that chapel. He's from him, the magnificent deeds lineage comes, Asanga. He's actually a contemporary of Augustine in the West, and some kind of relationship actually. And he was 900 years after Buddha's time, or maybe a little more, if the time was ever, nobody really knows exactly Buddha's time actually. And he thought that the Dharma had decayed and people were just mouthing it. It was like lost and was upset. So he went into he went to a meditation to meet Maitreya, the next Buddha, and get a preview. So he went to this cave place and he meditated like mad. He was a great master already. And he meditated 3 years, didn't see him and was leaving in disappointment. And then he saw something, and I won't tell the whole story, but he had a vision of somebody. He met a guy actually who was rubbing a piece of iron with a cloth. And he was puzzled by that. He said, "What are you doing?" And the guy said, "I'm making a needle." And he said, "You can't make a needle rubbing a cloth." And the guy said, "Really?" And he showed up a dish full of needles. So they said, "Oh, okay, I get the message. I better put more time in." So he goes back, another 3 years, no vision. He leaves, sees he has 3 different visions. And finally, after 12 years, he leaves. He still hasn't met Maitreya, and he's really upset. And so he comes to the town, and in that town, he's in the outskirts, in the sort of dump outside of the town. He meets a dog, an old bitch, who is really sick and really horrible, like you meet in some of these poor countries. And hindquarters are all even gangrenous, and the maggots, you can see them on the surface, and it's terrible. And he's like, "Oh, my life is worthless. There's no Maitreya. I'm too unworthy to see if there is." And it's a night of despair, right? He's in despair. But he says, maybe I could at least fix up this dog. So then he goes and he takes it over near, there's some water somewhere, and he's going to wash it off, the wounds of the dog. And then as he starts to do that, he sees, focuses on the maggots. And they're kind of happily hopping around inside the dog, munching away. And he said, "Oh, now I'll hurt the maggots. I don't want to hurt the maggots. What can I do?" So then he's, I know what to do. So then he finds a piece of shard, he cuts a piece of meat from his thigh, a strip of meat like this, because he's demented 12 years and no result. So he puts that down on the ground, and then his plan is he's going to pick the maggots off and put them on his fresh, it's going to prefer my thigh meat, although he must have been a bit stringy by that time, but prefer that to the dog, and that way then he'll take the maggots somewhere. I mean, he wasn't quite figuring it out, but he was trying to do something. So then when he can't pick the maggots. They keep maggoting away from his grip. So then he goes and he decides, okay, I'll go down and I'll put my tongue down and touch the dog. The maggot will jump on my tongue because my tongue is more juicy than anything. And then I'll spit it on the thing, and one by one I'll take the maggots off. Then I'll clean the dog. So then he goes, the tongue thing out. And then just as he's about, and then he closes his eyes because it's so foul. And then suddenly, ping, he hears like this, he jumps back, and there is the Buddha Maitreya. The dog was the Buddha Maitreya. So then he said, "Oh, my Lord," he's bowing. But of course, coming up from the first bow, he's like complaining. He's a human being. And he says, "Oh, it's so great, my Lord, but where have you been for 12 years? What's the problem?" And then the guy says, "What do you mean, where have I been? I was there all the time. Who was making the needles? Who was the bird scraping the rock with the wing? Who was doing all this?" And so then, who was the water dripping, making the big bowl in the rock? And he says, "Oh, okay," he says, but then he doesn't believe it really. He's like he's like still complaining. So then Maitreya, look, you don't believe? You take me into town and see what happens. So then he takes this big glowing orb, this visionary deity, puts on his shoulder and runs into town. And he's all ecstatic and he's saying to everybody, oh, the future Buddha is here, it's so great. Oh, I've seen him, look at him. And everybody's throwing stones at him because they see a crazed looking yogi with a bleeding leg holding a horrible old filthy bitch on his shoulder and shouting it's the future Buddha. And they say, oh, what did he take? What is he on? Get him out of town. It's so funky. And so then he gets all discouraged and he's leaving town. And there's one old lady and a charnel ground lady, one of these, like corpse picking ladies. And she sees a jeweled foot on a lotus. She also sees the dog, but at the base of the dog, she sees the jeweled foot of Maitreya, so she offers a flower. So then that gives him some hope. And then Maitreya takes him to heaven, to where Maitreya is the Tushita, where Buddhas stay before they come to earth. And then, typical Buddhist, Tibetan and Indian Buddhist thing. And in heaven, does he lounge around? No, he dictates 5 books to him. He dictates 5 books, puts him to work, and sends him back down quickly to earth. You never heard that story? That's a great story. Okay. Any other question?
Tomorrow is March 10th.
Balu, I got it. Balu. Yes.
Tomorrow is March 10th. Could you say
What's that?
Tomorrow is March 10th. Could you
Yes.
say a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, sure. March 10th, I will be at the Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza in front of the UN, where I've gone since 1972, to every March 10th. Usually it's very cold, actually. But tomorrow it's like spring here. I think I'm the only person in New York to say it with an overcoat, because I ran out of the house before I could have woke up to the temperature. Anyway, March 10th is when the Tibetans gathered around the Norbalinka, the Dalai Lama's summer palace, to protect him from General Tan Quan San, is his name, who was going nuts and wanted to kill him. He was just frustrated with the Tibetans and wanted to crack down. And they were they shelled the house where he was, and they did this eventually. And he was inviting him without bodyguards or anybody somewhere. So the Tibetans all massed together, and the Tibetans had an uprising in Lhasa, unarmed, against the troops, about 50,000 troops, who were armed with artillery and machine guns, and they were massacred, like 80,000 people. But that's celebrated by Tibetans ever since as the uprising, what they call Uprising Day, sometimes they call it Freedom Day, Independence Day, whatever, and they call it that. And they do that in New York, and all over in France and all over the world, wherever Tibetan exiles are. And in Tibet, they also do stuff, unfortunately, and then they get arrested there and beaten up badly, and it's not a good thing. But, and the Dalai Lama, until when he was political leader of the exiles, every March 10th, he would give a speech. And we have a book we published from French with a lot of his March 10th speeches over 50 years. From 61 to 2011, he gave the speeches. He doesn't do that anymore because he retired in 2011. And I always speak there, not as representing Tibet House, because Tibet House is totally cultural. We don't have a political stance about what the story is with Tibet. Personally, I follow the Dalai Lama that we believe the Chinese leadership will wake up, that the attempt to destroy Tibetan culture and oppress the Tibetans is self-defeating. They need the Tibetans to be on that high altitude plateau where nobody can live who is brought up at sea level healthily. They get sick up there. And the Tibetans are very, adventurous and very intelligent and very energetic people. If they're treated nicely, they'll be very loyal and friendly. They like Chinese food. They like momo, shushadze. They're very happy with Chinese people. They have been for thousands of years. They used to fight about 1,500 years ago, but then they were also very happy with them. And it's just silly, this whole stupid thing that, we have to crush them down so they'll never ask for their country and be independent. And because they want to be Tibetans, that means they don't want to be part of China. They'd be happy to be part of China. The Dalai Lama has a vision of like Asian Union, East Asian Union, like European Union. He loves European Union. And he thinks nationalism should fade and people should relate in an intelligent way and in a nice way, and everyone should have Medicaid. Also, like Bernie. Dalai Lama likes Bernie. And he likes Hillary too. And Bernie and Hillary better work together if they want to win against the loonies, the Looney Tunes that are running around the other side. And so we remember the people who died and the unfortunate thing, the whole idea of, the century of humiliation and China freaking out and everybody's an imperialist, etc. They're behaving like colonialists. It's kind of silly. But they were doing it sort of to defend themselves. And then there's a huge confusion because who was torturing China actually were the Manchus. The people who had an empire on top of the Chinese were the Manchurians, who are not Chinese. And the Qing dynasty was the Manchu Empire, when they were dominating the Chinese people. And then the Europeans were trying to get in there, smuggling dope in there and behaving like uncivilized, nasty manner, British, etc. But they didn't really control them completely because the Manchus were sitting on top of them. But that's another story. Anyway, we're all going to get through it, and Chinese people will be changed, and we'll all be friends. Everybody will be happy. Definitely, definitely. They're marvelous. The Chinese. Now that painting over there, I want to call your attention to that extraordinary painting by Tenzin Norbu, because I just did a review of the book by Tsering Özer, who's a citizen of China, who lives in Beijing, who wrote about, it's called Tibet on Fire, by Verso Books. When that comes out, you should really look at it. It has a cover, beautiful cover made by Ai Weiwei. Ai Weiwei made a great statement. He said that Tibet is the great test for China and the rest of the world as to whether they really can think that human rights and justice and peace are really desirable, or they just don't care about it. They just just grab and do whatever you feel like. And he said, so far, he said there's no dodging this test and there's no getting around it, Ai Weiwei said. And he said it on Twitter. And he said, and so far, our response to this test has been shameful and disgraceful. It really makes a strong statement. Ai Weiwei, a beautiful cover he makes. Yeah, a really beautiful cover. And that picture, 153 Tibetans have offered their body into flames, which they don't call it themselves self-immolation, because they don't think they're destroying their self. Actually, they're expanding their self in generosity by giving their body away. And then because they're saying that this thing of people against people and struggle and conflict is no good. We're not going to hurt anybody else, but we're going to show you that we're not attached to our bodies, so you can't dominate us. So therefore, let us all be free together, And then you'll be free of having to dominate me, and I'll be free of being dominated by you. And eventually, I'll be in another life. I'll be reborn. But that painting is so amazing. That's a Buddha, who's offering his body as an offering to all the Buddhas like that. Even in the flames he's showing, there is the bliss of universal goodness in every atom of the flame, in every cell of the body, in his mind. He's smiling, but he's like, it's truly, it is a deep, whatever one makes a kind of judgment on the surface, oh, that's so horrible, oh, they're so crazy, oh, that's terrible. There are many people who say that because they don't want to really face the transcendence of it. It's so far out that these people, they're not hurting, they're not bombing anybody. They're just making a gift and saying, the whole thing is just not grabbing bodies, grabbing other people's bodies, even grabbing your own, you can give it all away, and that's the way to live it. That's the way that the body becomes more and more beautiful and fantastic. I really like that painting of Tenzin Norbu. If nobody else buys it, I'm into it. And all these other things, these flying monks, and he's amazing, that guy. The monks, they're all flying around the monks. They don't really have a face, meaning they transcended their sense of individual identity, their alienated identity, and they're just flowing. They're doing Samanta Mantra flowing all over the place. I really think they're fantastic. I really like it. I'm sorry. I know. I'm told it's over, right? Time is over. Is that right? She said she's doing it's a wrap. That's my Rebecca. She's telling me it's a wrap. which is a nice way of saying, shut up. So thank you all very much. Have a nice evening. I will be away. Wait, next week, the wonderful abbot of Tashilumbo Monastery will be here talking about the spirit of enlightenment, conceiving the spirit of enlightenment, conceiving the bodhicitta, creating the bodhicitta in your mind, which is the real Buddhist way of being born again, where you decide by making a kind of commitment in yourself, although the way the Tibetans do it, don't overdo it, don't try to be a martyr, make a commitment to try to make a commitment. You have to have the wisdom of interconnectedness with everything to be able to have bodhi mind, the spirit of enlightenment, which means that since I'm here forever with all of you for our infinite lives, I'm going to make our relationship the absolute optimal relationship. And the optimal relationship is when we're all Buddhas and we all do totally love each other. The whole world, everyone loves everyone. And that's the optimal relationship. And that I'm going to make a commitment to live like that all my lives until that is realized. But it's not real to make that, to say I'm doing that, when one has not unearthed in one's mind the materialist idea that one is just on one's body of this life, and one has come to realize that one is a long-term evolutionary continuum, and therefore you might as well optimize everything, because you're not getting away from anybody. You're going to be here with everybody. You know what? And you guys have already been my mom once, and you don't want to do it another time. It was a bad job. And I don't necessarily want to be your mom again either. You know, instead, we're all just Buddhas. And then it's easy. Like Maya's being a mom is like it's like a gas and a half. Listen to her. Like the lights came in, and I was going like this and that. That's the way to be a mom. As a Buddha, a female Buddha in her case. Okay? Okay, good night. See you. So try to catch the Lama next week. And then Tom Yarnell, my friend, is here. My colleague and dear friend, Thomas Yarnell, is there, and he will be doing a Buddhist ethics thing. And everybody says, I haven't been to his lectures lately, but they say, finally somebody better than me. And I think that's true. So you should catch that one too. That's on the 23rd, and then the abbot is back on the 30th, and then I'll be back in April. Back from India, okay? Thanks a lot. Take care. Okay, bye.